Hello, I'm Louise Ishuk and I'm an artist part of Fourthland.
Hello, I'm Eva Knutsdotter and I'm an artist part of Fourthland.
The idea of Fourthland was about people coming together through collective creation, and that everybody who was involved in that process became part of this imaginary land. So it was about honouring the collective making of an idea, the stories that would emerge, something of a myth, and bringing unexpected groups of people together. So Fourthland then becomes a place of many occupants and a place where marginalised knowledge comes into the centre.
So we work with a wide range of mediums, everything from sculpture to performance to sound, and we often use quite laborious craft processes within the things that we make.
The themes we're interested in our practice include process-based psychology, mythology, ritual, psychoanalysis, archetypal gesture, and working with feminist and alternative societies. So the work on the Wenlock Barn estate started this time of year 10 years ago in 2008, and it was originally a commission from the Shoreditch Trust, and they wanted artists or architects to come together and create a temporary garden for the Shoreditch Festival. We kind of thought about the brief and looked at the estate and walked around and really felt that creating a temporary garden wasn't what was needed on the estate, and as an artist wouldn't have been the right approach to the brief. So we suggested that we did a project that was to stay, and that it was a place where over time it would grow and flourish into something else.
Over the years, we've worked with different groups of people on the same estate, which also means that there's been different cultures as part of the different projects we've done. And we've always enjoyed being quite curious and performative about our initial arrival on the estate.
So all of these pieces of earth were actually previously unused, were owned by the council, and then through the process of the work over the years, people actually started to imprint themselves and their families and their stories into that territory. And that was why the project became so exciting to continue, and why we as artists got other bits of funding to kind of carry on the work, because there was something quite unique and unusual about the stories and the sharings of all the cultures.
How much knowledge there is in these domestic environments, in these buildings.
And what became almost addictive and wonderful was the fact that as people kind of from all over the world started kind of claiming ownership of something that was public land and council land, and in that space wasn't used at all, they started putting their memories and their family stories on it. Something really magical started happening between the cultures, and then it became something as artists that we wanted to continue to work with, getting other bits of funding to do further projects and claiming over the years more and more pieces of land.
One of the really subtle but powerful outcomes from this process has been that 4 years ago, people of different cultures would not necessarily try each other's food. So whereas everyone would very happily bring food to share in the garden, there was a hesitation about actually tasting and trying something new. And now what is happening is that barrier has completely been broken down, and there is this sharing and tasting of each other's culture, literally.
And also thinking a lot about the feminine and how that sort of softer, more sort of welcoming, a little bit curious, playful way could be embedded into some of the performances that we did. So we started working a lot with bundles and the idea of mystery, and it all was inspired by the people that we work with on the estate, and really sort of this deep kind of listening that we did to what their knowledge was bringing us as artists.
So one of the terms that we've come up with in response to working in this way is something we're calling handheld knowledge. And it is very much the idea that we already know a lot, or we carry a lot within our hands, and when we make together, so when we do these shared makings, that knowledge comes out and it merges with the other knowledge that is within the gathering.
So the objects that we make, often in public space through these lengthy processes of performing and handling and shared making, are then imprinted back into the objects that are in the gallery. So there's something of all the forms in the gallery spaces that have had a life elsewhere, somewhere in the process, somewhere as part of collective creation. So Pier is really near to the Wenlock Barn estate, and we've been really inspired by how the gallery was working with its local audiences in this area and its connection with Hoxton Street. And we felt it was very much in line with what we were trying to achieve in a different way on the estate, so how to kind of bring the voices of residents more into a process of artwork. We felt that Pier were trying to do that, bringing those audiences into the gallery in a different way.
So one of the projects we did with Ingrid before this one was during her refurbishment of the gallery and the corner of this street, which was all about actually opening up the gallery so that more people would come, the local people. We decided to, as part of this process, install ourselves on the street outside the gallery, again in a sort of curious arrival where we rolled bundles of straw in this quite ceremonial process whilst humming. And what happened was that people from all walks of life and cultures, they came up to us and said that they knew what we were doing and actually ended up telling us an interesting story from their culture.
So the project we did outside of Pier on the street became a beginning of an exchange that we had with Pier about how to link the work we've done on Wenlock Barn estate and bring that and celebrate that here in the gallery.
So my name's Rosalind Fowler. I'm an artist and filmmaker with a background in film and visual anthropology. So some of the themes that I've been interested in working with over the years have been folk culture, ritual, alternative communities and prehistory. Some years ago I went off around England filming various folk traditions. Actually I went over many years because a lot of these events take place once a year. So there's always been an element of my practice which is about engaging with communities and meeting all people from all different walks of life. So the primary medium that I work in is 16mm film. And in recent years I've always hand processed my footage using an ecological formula of coffee grains. More recently I was selected as artist in residence for the William Morris Gallery. And that project was fantastic because the proposal that I put forward was based at Organic Lee, which is a food growing cooperative on the edge of Epping Forest. And I'd actually been a gardener there for 2 years before I put this proposal forward. So it was really great to have already built some strong relationships with the people I was working with. So that piece of work was actually inspired by William Morris's utopian novel News from Nowhere. And I was interested in drawing out the resonances between William Morris's visions for an imaginary future London, which contain many green ideals about this ecotopian society, and Organic Lee, which is this amazing inspirational community which exists just a few miles down the road from where William Morris grew up.
After a long period of time working with the estate, we've always wanted to evolve the work into other mediums, and one of the things we've been wanting to do is experiment with working with film. And when we encountered Rosalind Fowler's work, we were just very inspired by how she'd worked with other communities all across the country to sort of capture folklore and mystical traditions that are still existing.
Because after doing all the work, what became really apparent is that everything that was kind of coming up as part of this project couldn't be captured in documentary. We needed to kind of make a different type of film to really show what was going on.
And the thing that I thought was really interesting about linking up on this project was that my practice has started to look at the idea of film as craft as well, and then Forthland, the craft ideas and craft making is really integral to their practice. So we all had these sort of commitment, I guess, to sort of analogue craft processes, slow processes that needed care and time. And so it seems like a great fit on so many levels. And the other thing that I thought was really appealed to me was their commitment to working with one community for a really long period of time. And for me that felt very important, because I'd just come off the back of a project where I'd been involved with the community for 2 years, and I just feel that you can't suddenly instigate a project without those kind of relations that you've built.
We wanted the work to be really collaborative with the residents, and we didn't want to kind of come in with an idea about how it was going to be. So we were trying to think of methods or ways that we could open that out to create a collaborative script and story for the film. Because every house, every visit home was kind of like going to a different country.
When the idea from the outset was that we would do a series of house visits to generate materials, and then that would then provide the inspiration for a series of public performances in public space on the estate, and that we would create a kind of sculptural backdrop that would appear in different formations in every scene.
So the project became a really interesting exchange about the idea of myth and everybody's kind of inner performative desires, and this way that in many other cultures around the world those kind of gestures are much more shared on the street and shared in public space, which of course in England isn't the case anymore. And I guess it became a bit of a forum to kind of tune in with what people's feelings about ritual actually were. And in some cases that was met with like a lot of joy and a lot of excitement and people kind of curious in ideas. And then other people who were kind of bound with more kind of religious faiths, actually it provided a really wonderful opportunity to kind of just feel into the origin of myth in a very different way. And what was really wonderful about the process is it actually allowed space for people to bring their different, sometimes dissonant experiences or ideas in without that being a conflict. So we actually had a lot of time where we talked with many people about their sort of varying ideas about this type of symbolism. And when we were then coming to edit the film or kind of put some of the scenes together, we also wanted to kind of bring in this idea of kind of resonance and dissonance, which is actually all kind of interwoven into what a community is. And actually it's about holding space for a lattice of kind of expectation and understanding of resonance and dissonance.
What this new journey has formed is what we've decided to name the myth of Breadrock or Breadrock. And it's very much inspired by the whole process of the work. So as Rosalind said, it's not just about displaying the objects that we use, but actually to really show the sort of richness of every single layer that this process has brought to our practice and to our imaginations. So everything is based and has a root in something that was told or something that was shared, an action that was made, but it's also created its own narrative and its own world, as it were. So it's kind of taken another step out from the estate as such being only about that estate, but actually taking on more of a magical universal narrative that can sort of seep out into other ideas of what community and society could be.
Mm.